In the 1600s, Europe was tearing itself apart over religion. Catholic kingdoms fought Protestant states. Governments strictly monitored the printing presses. In much of the continent, holding the wrong theological interpretation or reading the wrong philosopher could easily cost you your life. But the Dutch Republic operated differently. Amsterdam, in particular, had become a highly unusual sanctuary for those fleeing persecution elsewhere. French Protestants, radical printers, and Jews fleeing the Inquisition in Spain and Portugal all found safe harbor along the city's canals. Banned manuscripts from across Europe were smuggled into Amsterdam, quietly printed and distributed. By proving that a nation could maintain its wealth and stability without enforcing religious uniformity, the Dutch Republic provided the first practical blueprint for a modern, tolerant society. Yet, this enlightened sanctuary eventually turned against the very philosopher who first clearly articulated the modern right to free thought. Baruch Spinoza wrote that every human being possesses an inherent right to think independently and speak those thoughts freely. We usually treat free speech as a straightforward virtue, but Spinoza's Exile reveals a difficult reality. Even the architects of tolerance discovered a limit to what they could endure when their ideals were put to the test. Spinoza was born directly into Amsterdam's Portuguese Jewish community. His family was part of the refugee group that benefited so heavily from Dutch openness. As a young man, he pushed this ethos into uncharted territory. He moved beyond the established boundaries of religious freedom and began publicly questioning the authority of Scripture, the validity of miracles, and the nature of God himself. In the 17th century, questioning divine authority was treated as an explosive threat to public order. The entire structure of law, morality, and government was built on religious foundations. To dismantle those foundations was to invite anarchy. Spinoza had evolved from a peaceful resident into the ultimate stress test for the Dutch Republic's most famous ideal. In 1656, the system finally reached its breaking point. Amsterdam's Jewish leaders decided they could no longer tolerate his philosophy, issuing a formal and severe excommunication. The mechanics of the banishment were absolute. He was cursed, he was expelled, he was entirely cut off from all friends and family, who were strictly forbidden from reading his words or even standing near him. There was a cold political pragmatism behind this decree. The Jewish community lived as guests within a Christian nation. Harboring a radical heretic who attacked the foundations of religion was dangerous. If the community leaders did not silence him, the Dutch authorities might silence them all. The survival of the sanctuary required the sacrifice of individual free thought. The most tolerant society in Europe had banished its greatest mind. Despite his complete social destruction, Spinoza survived. Had he published these ideas in France or Spain, he likely would have faced execution. Looking at this model of Dutch society, we see how they manage dangerous ideas through a dual-layered system. Above, the state publicly banned Spinoza's books to maintain the illusion of order. Below, a quiet elite network of printers and intellectuals was allowed to circulate them privately. The state functioned as a filter rather than a solid wall. Radical philosophy was quietly permitted in the shadows, strictly on the condition that it never crossed upward into the public sphere. This reveals the true boundary line of early free speech. The Dutch authorities cared very little about ideological purity. Their primary concern was pragmatic social peace. Today, Spinoza is universally revered, yet the exact same tension he exposed in 1656 remains entirely active in the modern world. The Netherlands continues to debate the exact boundaries of a free society. Intense arguments over hate speech, the limits of religious criticism, and the cultural integration of immigrants dominate their parliament. The country that pioneered the open society is still caught in a centuries-long struggle, trying to define exactly where freedom must end to prevent a society from fracturing. Spinoza's Exile leaves us with an uncomfortable observation. Defending free speech is remarkably easy when society generally agrees with the person speaking. The true test of a tolerant culture only begins the moment someone voices an idea that society genuinely, deeply fears. The bitter, endless argument over the limits of speech is not a failure of a free system. It is the inescapable baseline condition of freedom itself.